Okay, welcome everyone. We are in Parshas Bo. Okay, Parshas Bo is the middle of the plagues. We have three plagues in this week's Torah portion, and then the Jews come out of Egypt. So there are a lot of questions we need to understand. First of all, everyone asks, why 10 plagues? Why need any plagues, really? God could have just made Pharaoh decide to let the Jews go, or not even. I mean, how many times are there one country that conquers another country and historical changes and things happen and they leave? So if the goal is them to leave, then Hashem could have made it they left in any way. They could have left one day, something happened, a revolution of some sort, a world catastrophe, and they're able to go. Or Pharaoh could have, or it could have been one plague. A plague, and then Pharaoh would have said, "Oh, this is too much, go." But why 10 plagues? Understand that. Now, not only that, I want us to understand something that's very strange, which is in the when the Jews are the last plague happens, the plague of the firstborn. So what happens is that Pharaoh says, "Go, go, go." It comes in the middle of the night. They're all dying. Leave quickly. Go, get out of it. And the Jews say no. We're not leaving like thieves in the middle of the night. We're going to wait and leave in the morning. Okay, that's what happens. Now, in the morning, they leave. And we all know that we eat matzah to commemorate when we left Egypt. We left in a hurry. And we didn't have time for the dough to rise. We had to get out because the Egyptians said, go, go. That's a weird question. So if they knew they were going to leave in the morning, and Egyptians were pushing them to leave at night, why didn't they start a little earlier? Why didn't they prepare the bread half an hour before when it was still night? Strange. And you could say that, I don't know, in the morning, and in the morning was faster than thought, but it's still strange that, you know you're leaving in the morning, and so prepare your bread. What's the problem? Now, worse than that, the reason we eat matzah is because we had to leave Egypt in a hurry because they pushed us to go in the morning. Told us at night to go. No, we're not leaving now. We're leaving in the morning. The morning was very busy. We had to run. No time for the dough to rise. That's those. Now, but it's weird because the first Seder that happened was that night. And in that Seder, it says to eat it with your belts on and your shoes and your staff and eat it quickly. Why eat it quickly? And what were you going to eat there besides for the korban pesach and the Paschal lamb? You ate matzah. Well, why did you eat matzah? It didn't happen yet. And why are you eating in a hurry? You're leaving in the morning in a hurry. So why the night before, when they're having their first Seder, their first korban pesach, their first Paschal lamb, and the matzah, they're eating matzah already. It didn't happen. There was no rush yet. But they're also told to eat in a rush, which, by the way, is not the law later on. Hasidic commentators say it's fascinating that there was some rush that was the first Seder, and other Seders, you sit back, you recline, you like kings. So, it's an interesting thing. Why is the first one in a rush? And it's matzah, even though it didn't happen yet. You need to see that. So I want to discuss that, and I also want to discuss something at the end of the parsha. And in the parsha it says that there's going to be Hashem saved the firstborn, and therefore the firstborn were sanctified. Because the firstborn Egyptians died, firstborn the Jews were saved, so the firstborn are sanctified, and that's why we have to redeem them, because they don't do the service anymore because the Kohanim do it. So we have to go to the Kohen and say, okay, my son should be for God in the service because he was saved, and I'm going to redeem him. And then it says if you have a seh, you have a firstborn sheep, so that's sanctified. If there is a donkey, though, which is the only non-kosher animal, a tummy animal, that also is sanctified, the firstborn, but you don't sanctify the donkey itself, because what are you going to do with a donkey? You can't bring it as an offering, can't eat it. So what do? You have a choice. You have a firstborn donkey, you go and you redeem it against a sheep, and you give the Kohen the sheep, which is you're going to do that because the donkey's a lot more expensive. So you have a firstborn donkey, and you say, okay, this should go, the firstborn of the donkeys should go to the Kohen, because the firstborn will say, our firstborn, my firstborn animals. Okay, so I give it to the Kohen. But he's not going to want a donkey, can't use a donkey. So instead, I give him the sheep. Well, it's weird because that's the animal that's used. The non-kosher animal is the donkey. Why the donkey specifically? And then it says, if you don't want to give your donkey, so what you do is instead, if you don't want to give a sheep instead of the donkey, what do? You kill the donkey. The donkey can't be used. Wow, kill the donkey? And how do you kill him? It's very strange. You break him in the nape of the neck. Arafta, in the nape of the neck. It's oref. Very strange. Okay? If you don't want to go and give the Kohen the sheep instead of the donkey has to be killed in this special way, breaking the back of his neck called the oref. Nape of the neck. Well, what is that about? And finally, I want to answer another question, which everyone asks, is that we have 10 plagues. We talked about, we have to explain why 10 plagues, but it's also funny that the division of the plagues, there's 7 in last week's parsha and 3 in this. Why didn't you put them all in one parsha? Why did you split them up? 7 here and 3 here. Why put them all 10 in one? We'll put 9 and then put the 10th one, the firstborn. I understand, but what's the 7 in last week's parsha and then 3 in this? So let's understand this. We have to understand why there were 10 plagues, and really what is the function of the plagues. Because when you say in English a plague, it's a bad thing. In Hebrew, it's makos. It's makos. Now, makos means to be a hit. It means something crashing in something. And that could be good, that could be bad. It says in the Zohar that every plague, every makkah was a wounding for the Egyptians and a healing for the Jews. So now you got a different perspective of what these plagues are. They're not, oh, we need to get out of Egypt and we are going to beat those Egyptians and beat them 10 times. These makkahs, these plagues have a function that they are a negative experience for the Egyptians, and they're an elevating, healing experience for the Jews. How does that work? So, just like we said, there are 10 plagues. There's a lot of 10s in the world, right? There are 10 commandments. There are 10 fingers and 10 toes. So you put your hands above your head, which is the highest part of you, because your hands can go above your head. Then you will have your highest part is 10, your lowest part is 10. We think in 10s. If you think about it, you realize when you're a kid and they say, how much is 8 and 5? So you think, well, 5 is got 2, I'll make it to 10, I have 3 left over. We think in 10s. Why is that? So the world is created in such a way that we start with oneness, and then there is a sort of an expression that we can get a handle of. When we say one, I can't really understand oneness. I have no handle of it. Well, 10 really is 1. It's the first set. There are 9 numbers, and then when it gets to 10, it's 1 set. So 10 is the idea of the 1 being expressed in a certain way. 10 we can get a handle of to a certain degree. And that's the way God set the world up, that there would be an expression of stages that we could get a handle on called 10. That was the original 10 statements of creation. So the world was created in 10 statements. Let there be lights, waters split, the upper waters, lower waters. If you count, there are 10 statements of creation. Now, the same question is, why did God have to create the world in 10 statements, created in 1 statement? So the Mishnah says, very strangely, the Mishnah says that God created the world in 10 statements to give reward to the righteous who build the world and support a world that was made with 10 statements, and punish the evil who destroy a world made with 10 statements. What does that mean? Let's understand. The idea of the 10 statements are the 10 creations of the world, but the truth is, by making them 10, there is there are layers and layers of creation that are being concealed. Like, so for example, if you imagine someone says something, so he said it, he's the direct source. If there's one step and then two steps, let's say he passes the message down to 10 people, you get disconnected from the source of it. The 10 statements of creation, each one puts another layer. Statement one, you can see it's directly back to Hashem. Statement two, it's kind of a little farther. Statement three, a little farther. Statement four, on and on. Till it gets to 10 statements, and that whole number, the 10 statements, now puts the world in the perfect balance. It puts the world where a righteous person can say, oh, there's a God in this world. And an evil person can say, there is no God in this world. Now, that's bizarre because normally things are not so open to opposite discussions and opposite understandings. I say, what are these? So say glasses. You think it's a paperweight? Okay, it's a paperweight. Fine, but you're not going to say it's a horse. You're not going to say something totally opposite. Yet when two people look at the world, one could say there definitely is God, and one says there's definitely not. So how could it be? They look at the same reality and see two opposite things, and they're sure of it. And the answer is because the 10 statements are like layers of an onion that conceal more and more and more. And what happens is, when you get to the 10th, it's in a perfect balance where if you want to see Hashem in the world, you will. And if you don't, you won't. It's the perfect, and that's what the Mishnah means. The righteous people will build the world when there's enough concealment that they have free will to see God, or, God forbid, not to. So they get reward. And the evil people, it was still a perfect balance. They still could have seen if they would have wanted to. They get punished. So now that is the idea of the 10 statements. Each one is another layer. Okay? What are the plagues? The plagues are the revealing of the hiddenness of reality. They're not just about, we have to get the Jews out of Egypt. No, God can get them out right away. But what happens is every person has their own blocks. They have their own things that stop them from seeing the truth. Every plague was uncovering and showing there is a creator in the world. And he has complete control over the world, and he's involved in the world. And every plague was a healing for the Jews, but a plague for the Egyptians, because the Egyptians said, we don't want to see it. So the plague happened, and they had no connection to what it was trying to show them. But for the Jews, what was happening when there's a plague, they said, wow, God controls the world. Look at that. There were animals that attacked. They killed the Egyptian. They left me alone. So, wow, God does control everything in the world. And every plague, every makkah would remove one level of the 10 statements. So the first plague removed the 10th statement of creation and made it clearer that the source of this is God. The second plague removed the 9th statement of creation. The third, the 8th statement, and it goes on and on and on. So what's the idea of the plagues? It's not to get us out. It's going to get us out anyway. The makkahs are the revelation of God in the world. God's revealing himself. I'm the source, he's saying. And therefore, if you have a connection to it, it's a healing for you. If you have no connection to it, you're stuck in your idolatry. The more God's revealing that he's the source of the world, the more distant and cut off, and the more it's a plague for the person. Okay. Now, I want to show you the last 3, which is in this week's talk portion. We'll also understand why it's 7 and 3. So, well, first, let me tell you why it's 7 and 3, first of all. Because just like I told you, the reality of the world functions on 10. This is what the mystics tell us, the idea of the 10 sefirot, the 10 emanations of God. It's one and always a oneness we can't understand, but God gave us in this world some handle to have some understanding of Him. And this process that we see is called a process of 10 emanations, and sefirot. In human beings, we also have, the whole world is in this process of 10. So for a person also in the process of 10. Let's say like this, I have an idea in my head, I think about it, I get a whole picture, and then I break it up into all parts. So let's say I want to build a building, and then afterwards I say, I get a picture of this is what the building would look like, and then I break it, how many rooms, how many stairways, all these things and the parts. That's in my head. Now I got to get that idea, man, and bring it out into my body. I have my right hand pushing forward, my left hand saying, like this. I balance my right leg, my left leg. It says the reproductive cycle, and giving over to the receiver. That's the 7 lower parts of the person. That's the 7 days of creation. That's what it is. That's why there's 7 days of creation. There's 6, and then the receiver of it all, the Sabbath, the Shabbos. But the work of people is in the work of the 7 days. The 3 levels above, which is called like the mind, that is not for our work. That's the blueprint. That we don't have any effect on that. That doesn't need our work. God created the world that we're experiencing the world in 7. 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes in the scale, 7 days of the week, 6 plus the Shabbos. That's the 7. When you get to 8, 9, and 10, you're getting to the blueprint, so to speak, the mind of creation. So that we have the same idea. That is the way the 3 levels of our mind. And that's why last week's Torah portion was fixing up the 7 lower elements and revealing them. In this week's portion, we go to a new level. We're revealing now the first 3 steps of creation, which line up with the first 3 emanation, the first 3 sefirot, which is, so to speak, the mind. Wow. All right, let's understand how that works. So I'll give an example. So we'll start from the first plague in this week's portion, which is the plague of the arbet, the locusts. Now, that's the 8th plague, and therefore it'll line up with the 3rd statement of creation. What's that 3rd statement of creation? It was that God said, let there be a division, a rakia, a firmament between the upper waters and lower waters. It was the world of separation. Okay? The creation, the world created division. Okay? It created an upper waters and lower waters. And that's really what happened on day 2. It's the beginning of a certain sense of duality, of where people could think that there's more than one, God forbid. But that was the idea of creating a multifaceted, multifarious reality. What was the plague that corresponds to that? It was the plague of the arbet. The arbet are locusts, but the word arbet is the word harbet. It means a lot. Okay, the aleph and the hey are letters that are interchangeable. There's 5 different places we speak in our language in Hebrew, and when you have a letter that comes from the same spot, the aleph, hey, chet, and ayin, or guttural, they can interchange. So the word arbet, locust, is the same as harbet, a lot. Not only that, but the sages tell us that there are the arbet, there's tons of different varieties of arbet, the more than anything else. And there's a very strange verse in Mishlei that says the arbet, the locusts have no king. It's a very bizarre thing. There's so many different things, but they have no one leading them, and yet they know how to go, which is very strange. Usually you have, let's say, if you have bees, you have the queen bee, and they all work around them. Ants, right? So the arbet is strange because they're so multifarious, so many different kinds, and they have no one leader, but somehow they know how to move it together in unison. But what does it mean they have no leader? It means that they seem to be all over the place. Okay? That was the statement of creation. Let there be this world that looks separate, the upper water, lower waters. So that comes as an attack to the Egyptians, where they see there are locusts all over the place. According to Rashi, maybe one species, not according to the Ramban, Nachmanides, but be as made, the locust itself has many species, and they're all over the place. The Egyptians see this multifarious thing, this creation that's so multiplying, but it makes no sense. They see no unity in it, and it's just destruction for them. And for the Jews, though, they see there's a source of this. So even though the water is split and it looked like there's, two and more, there are many different species that seem to be not connected. No, they are, because they all come from the source. So for the Egyptians, the level of, it's called das, or it's called bina in this case, the mind that extrapolates and builds it, for them was just a lot of things that just blew their vessel. They couldn't understand it. For the Jewish people, it was understanding that this creature that seems all over the place. I don't know if you ever, I was once in, it's not the same thing, but I was once in Baltimore, and they have those, locusts, I think they're called. They're like this locust, and they're frightening because they're all over the place. And that's nothing compared to what the real swarm of locusts is. And so for the Jews, that was a healing, because the multiplicity of the world, the seeming division of an upper world and a lower world, the upper world, lower worlds, was revealed to be the source. So the plague for the Egyptians was a healing for the Jews. God revealed the third statement of creation. Okay, let's go to the next one. What was the ninth plague and the second statement of creation? Well, that's very easy. The second statement of creation was, let there be light. And what was the ninth plague? The plague of darkness. But if you look at the words in the text, it says, although it was darkness for the Egyptians, for the Jews it was light. Or Moshe Sam, all their dwellings were filled with light. It doesn't just mean they could see. It means it was understanding. It was light of clarity, of seeing the world as it really is. And that's exactly what it was. There's two ways a person can be blind. One is total darkness, and one is too much light. So the plague itself was this revelation of the second statement of creation, that God said, let there be light, and here's the light. And if you can't see the light, you're going to be blinded by the light. But if you can, it's light. In all their dwellings, they see our clarity. Wow. Okay, now let's understand the last of the plagues, and we're going to understand now with this the answer to our other questions we asked about this rushing they were doing. They ate their seder quickly. Well, why are they eating it quickly? And they're eating matzah. They didn't leave yet. And why is everything in a rush? There was no rush yet. You had 6 hours or 8 hours to eat your meal and then leave. So understand that idea. What is the 10th plague? 10th plague, we know, is the plague of the firstborn. And what is the first statement of creation? So the sages tell us, in the beginning is considered the first of the statements. Gracious, beginning. Hear it? Beginning, the firstborn. Why is the first? What does that mean? Why did God punish the firstborn of the Egyptians? What was so significant about the firstborn of the Egyptians? It sounds like, yeah, okay, love their firstborn, but maybe he likes the little kid better than his first. The answer is that for the Egyptians, the firstborn were the priests, they were the holy ones, they were whatever, gods or whatever it was. But let me explain why that was. The Egyptians worshiped the sheep, right? And that's one of the reasons, it is the main reason why the Paschal lamb is a sheep, because we took their God and we poured it as an offering. Now, why they worship the sheep? I mean, they had many gods, but that was the one for them. But why? Why of all things? The answer is because when you look at the constellations, the considered to be the first of the constellations is the spring month. That's considered to be the first one. That is the month of Aries. Aries is the ram. The reason why they worship the sheep, because it was the first of the constellations. The first child, the first, was their gods. Why was the first their gods? What does that mean? It means that they were not interested in the source of creation. They were interested in the powers. That's why when Moshe comes to Paro and he says, Hashem says to free the Jews, Paro says, I don't know Hashem. I don't know. What do you know Hashem? It says he had a list of all his gods. He didn't see that name. What does that mean? It means that he was interested in the powers, not the source of all existence. Who is the power, what we call it, say, the angels God puts in charge of something, the power of this, the power of that. Even the way the world is really set up, God set up a world where there are spiritual rules, spiritual forces, what we call malachim, and they may be the thing that is in the chain system, the step-down system is the one that affects a certain thing. They have no real power, just like God creates this as like the laws of the spiritual world. But Pharaoh didn't care about the source. He didn't recognize the source, Hashem. He said, okay, well, where's this power? That's all I care about. If I have control, he says in the verse, Li Orbanisani, the Nile is mine, I made it, or I made myself. What does that mean? Pharaoh thinks Pharaoh thought he was a god. How can you think he's a god? You know he didn't make it. Because I have control now. The Nile, they worship the Nile because the Nile would overflow and give them their produce. So the Nile is a source of power. We're a source of power. The firstborn represents the beginning of my power. And that's why everything for them was about the firstborn. And that's exactly where their plague comes. They go and they say, what is the source? It's not God, not the source of everything. It's the beginning of the power. That's the firstborn. So God destroys all of their firstborn. And that reveals the statement of the first, the beginning. Let me explain something here. It says, it's an amazing thing. It says that we read in the Haggadah of Passover, it says that the firstborn plague was not done through a law, through Malach, through Soph, not done through any of the spiritual forces that God created, but God himself did. What does that mean? It says God revealed himself. The plague of the firstborn was the ultimate pulling back the curtain. It was the 10th plague that revealed the very beginning. I am God, I am the source of all existence, which obviously lines up with the first of 10 commandments, I am God, right? Bereshit, the beginning. I am the source of all of this. Now, what happens is in life is, if a guy says to you, listen, you want this deal, so, you have to think, you got to check, you got to figure it out, But if a person puts down $1 million on the table and says, if you want this, you could have it, you got to take it. So what do? You grab it. Because if it's something that you want that's clear, you don't do it slowly. Okay, I'll take the money. No, something you really want, you grab it. What happened on the night of the plague of the firstborn? God revealed that he is the source of existence. Now, the Egyptians who said, no, we don't care about the source. We only go as far as our power base. They couldn't go to connect to the source. So when God reveals that he is the source, they die. The same plague that causes the Jews to exist causes them to disappear because they say, we don't care about the source. We only care about our power. And God reveals that they have no place in this world, which is not true by the Jewish people. Once God reveals himself, the firstborn, they run after it. They say, yes, you're the source of all existence. And that is the deeper reason why everything on Passover night happens quickly. Because you have to then, once that is revealed, you got to grab it. And that's what the Hasidic masters, they say. They say that's why the first Passover had to be quick because God revealed it. If you want it, you have to jump. And that's true for all spiritual growth in your life. When you have an opportunity, you have to grab it. After you grab it, you have to go and meditate on it, figure out how to make it part of you. So all the Passovers afterwards, all the Seder's are now as kings is slowly to take in what the moment that we grabbed in the first night when God revealed himself, we grabbed that, and now we're sticking it in and assimilating into our being. That was the revelation of the 10th plague of the first. God said, no, the firstborn are not the first. That power is only an extension or given from the source of the power itself, which is Hashem, which is God. That was revealed. Now, that's also, by the way, explains what we asked before about in the end of Parsha, the firstborn are now sanctified. We understand that because we say, wait a minute, the first of my fruits is not me. It really shows that it's not this separate power. It comes from the source. God gives the whatever power he gives, that's because he gave it. So I understand now the firstborn were sanctified to show they weren't their own power. They were the power that was given to them from the source of all power. But we said before, it's very strange about this donkey, that the donkey is the one non-kosher animal that also the firstborn is sort of sanctified, but it's not sanctified in the way you could use it because it's not a pure animal. You would flip it and you can give a kohen instead of a sheep instead. And if you don't, you have to break the nape of the neck. What does that mean? So let's explain in a moment the nape of the neck, the spot where they would break the donkey's neck. That in Hebrew is called ha'oref, the back of the neck. Ha'oref. That's where biologically is what's called the primitive brain is there, and that's the point where it meets from the brain going down into what they call the primitive brain, down the spinal column, and sending down the messages to your actual body. The word ha'oref, this spot, if you flip the letters around, it spells the name Paro, Pharaoh. Now Rizal says ha'oref, nape of the neck is Paro. Well, now we understand why. Because Paro's whole thing is that I'm not going up to the source. As long as I have the transmission from here to the spinal column telling me do this, do that, that's all I need. I'm not going to go and say, what's the source? Paro stops at the nape of the neck. And that's exactly why the donkey is called Egypt, because they were stubborn, sensuous also, but stubborn, and they would not take the lesson. And therefore, if you take the Egyptian who should have seen from the 10 plagues, should have seen, oh, this is Hashem. It's being revealed to me. Let me retract my direction and not get stuck in my falsehoods. So then you could say, all right, here's a donkey and here's a sheep instead. And the sheep will be sanctified and given to the Kohen as you know, for a holy dedication. But if the donkey, if the owner of the donkey is stubborn himself and doesn't want to do that, he's got to get rid of the donkey. He's like a donkey himself, stubborn. So what does he have to do? He's got to break it. Where's he got to break it? Right on the spot where he's stuck, not seeing the source of all power. And that's why the donkey, if you don't want to turn it and use it for like Israel is the sheep. You know, we'll call holy sheep. Why call holy sheep? Because it's amazing. Like a sheep really, you know, the Egyptians worse than the sheep. The Jews are called very often son kadosh, holy sheep. The sheep follows the master. What happened on that night was it took the Egyptian god of their sheep and it was destroyed and was shown that there's no separate power. And we became like sheep that went, we're going to follow our master. If you don't do it, if you become like an Egyptian donkey, then you're stuck right here, and that's why it's broken in that spot. Can't be redeemed. That is the deeper understanding of the Eser Makos, the 10 plagues. They're revealing the depth of reality, all the layers that God created, because you can't handle it. We think about it a second. It's like you take a plug and you want to plug in your shaver, and you go and plug it into the city's generator or whatever it's called, the city's electrical thing. You're going to blow everything up. It needs a step down system to be able to handle it. And God creates a system that is concealment, and there's different levels to go into conceal that we can handle it. And we can function. We have free will to choose. We see God, we not see God in our lives. The moment of the 10 makas were the revelation. And it revealed that I am the source of all existence. God himself revealed his Shekhinah, his divine presence on that night. And the Jews saw it and they ran after it. They ran to grab it. And the Egyptians disappeared because they had no connection to it. And that's what we have to understand. We have to go in our lives and not be sleepy when it's time to grab something. When you see a spiritual moment, you have to grab it quickly. That's the rule. Afterwards, you can think. But there's a balance and a time where you have a moment and it's a spiritual level. Then you have to take a jump because you have to show that's what you really want, and that would signify there's been a revelation. And that was the deeper reason the 10 plagues was because it was God showing the secrets behind the curtain that he is the source of all existence.